said, Father, we just started the company 45 minutes ago. I said, sometimes you got to have a little faith.
You get more and more comfortable with just uncomfortable.
It's like anything in life. It can get so overwhelming if you just look at the finish line.
All right, we are back for the Last Bold podcast with Tory Cosich of Proven IT.
Thank you, obviously, for having me. My name is Tory Cosich with Proven IT from Frankfort, Illinois, so about 45 minutes south of the city. And we started my family business, Proven IT, back in 2003 with my father and my brothers. There was about 7 of us down in Mokina, Illinois. So I know you just mentioned Frankfort in our conversation that we were having prior to this. So, my dad started his career, if we go back to, the 70s when he graduated from college with he started his career with Xerox, selling copy machines.
Yeah.
And this was in the 70s.
The sales machine.
So it was a business, machine. They didn't even print then. They weren't even networked. And so he cut his teeth, selling and servicing, copy machines. And he had started his own company then in 1980, actually, ironically, the year that I was born, and started it out of my grandfather's garage. And so back then they were selling typewriters, not even computers then. They were renting business equipment and then selling paper. And so they started that humble beginnings. He had grown the business. Fast forward, 18 years later, he sells the company. And so he found himself at 46 years old, retired. He's got 4 boys. He's got 0 hobbies. He drove my mom nuts. He doesn't golf. He doesn't fish. And so he found himself bored. And so we were sitting around the table, dinner table one night. I was getting ready to graduate from DePaul, 2003. My older brother, Brett, was an IT consultant for Price Waterhouse.
Oh, okay.
He'd graduated from IU,
All right, let's go.
right? He
Yeah.
was a computer information guy. And so he kind of had that IT background,
Mm-hmm.
really savvy, right? Everything was kind of just bustling then with, the internet and technology. And so my dad, asked us that night at dinner, do you guys want to start a company? And he's like, hey, I know this, copy print business and the paper business. And my older brother said, yeah, that sounds like something that maybe we could, kind of do a flip on it and have it really manage IT services as well. So starting with, document management and telecom. And so he kind of knew that side of the business. So here we are 23 years later, Proven IT. We're doing, it's not quite 50-50, but let's call it 50% of our business is the managed print,
Okay.
right? So your business equipment, network connectivity, where we will typically lease, sell, and service, business equipment to universities, to law firms, to manufacturing companies, to higher education.
So you'll lease them too.
Yeah, I mean, I would
Okay.
say probably 90% of our equipment is leased.
Wow.
And so that's called 50% of the business. And then the other half of our business, which is the growing, bustling part of our business, is managed IT services.
Got it.
So companies that usually typically have internal IT, but they want to outsource some of it. So whether it's, help desk, cyber, disaster, all the things. So we have everything from, level 1, technicians all the way up to network engineers, level 3, you know, virtual CIO, virtual CISOs.
Mm,
And so it's been we've been blessed.
yeah.
So
Well, there's a lot there. Let's go back to, was your dad always a salesman? Or, I mean, listen, Xerox back in the day, and I always most notably I know that they were a sales machine because that's where I think he's the CEO of ServiceNow.
oh yeah.
Was a Xerox guy, and he talks about, I think there are several who have been high up in the Fortune 50
Oh yeah.
that come from that culture, that sales
Yeah.
culture where they were just, I mean, if you were good there and you got trained, I mean, you were incredible.
Yeah. Well, and they had some of the best training too that they went to, and it's escaping me the name of, but it was out in New York where they sent them to, training, and so everybody that was in the sales side, would go through like a 6-week or 8-week extensive, training. And my dad, since I've obviously known him, he is the salesman of all salesmen,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's something that he's always excelled in. But then he had that entrepreneurship side of him, and
Well, that's what I want to, because I want to get into this because it's always interesting in small business about, you know, uh, especially as a kid, when you see your mom and or dad growing a business, does that kind of give you the entrepreneurial bug? But I want to ask about, so he was a great salesman at Xerox. How long was he there when he was like, wait a second, why don't I just do this myself?
So that's a great question. He was there for probably 6 years. He was one of the top sales reps, him and a good friend of his who ended up starting his own business equipment company.
Oh, really? Okay.
So 26, my dad says, one of the top sales reps. They had 95% of the market share back then. And he tells his manager, I'm going to go start my own business. And his sales manager suggested that he go see a psychiatrist and
Right.
say, like, what are you doing? You want to go compete against us? We have 90% of the market share.
Right.
But yet my dad had that, he had that discipline that he knew and that drive to say, I could go do this on my own.
And also kind of like the blind confidence of, he was 26 then?
Yeah, 26. Yeah.
26. And I mean, I'm guessing at the time, was he just selling like commercial size printers to, it was a B2B, and
Yeah.
who was he selling to? And did it basically stay the same when he started this business?
Yeah. So, back then he tells a story that he took an ad out in the yellow pages, which I don't even know if you know what the yellow pages are,
Yeah.
but back in the day, and he would put an ad in there, rent, you know, this copy machine for $250 a month. And it includes all of your paper and all of your toner and all of your service. And he was selling to, you name it, anybody that needed to make,
Wow.
copies of whatever, which back then, very paper intensive,
Uh-huh.
right? So
Sure.
a little bit different than the kids growing up nowadays and everything's on an iPad and
Right.
everything's electronically. And so he was selling to schools, to print shops, um, law
Was
firms.
he picking up the phone, or was he going door to door? Like, what
He
was his
was
way
he
of?
was going door to door, and picking up the phone, and, like, even when we started the company, when we started the business, we had 0 customers.
Huh.
I lived in the city, I graduated from DePaul. We were headquartered 45 minutes from the city. I lived in the city, just started knocking on doors. I remember we're walking into Holy Trinity High School off of Division Street, and I walked in, and it was the first day, didn't even have a business card. Walked in, introduced myself to the business manager, Father Larry. I said, "Father Larry, we started this company. You know, we do fax machines, we do printers, copiers." He's like, "Actually, I need a fax machine." I said, "All right." I went and looked online, and I got $700 and came back. I gave him the quote that afternoon. And he's like, "All right, I just need a reference." I said, "Father, we just started the company 45 minutes ago." I said, "Sometimes you got to have a little faith." So
Is that
sold
what you?
him, his first sale ever. I sold him a fax machine.
That's great.
And so, but I'll admit it. I've been kicked out of every high rise here in Chicago.
No
I mean, we
way.
started in 2003, so it was after
Right.
9/11.
Right.
And I would go cold call and I'd get a meeting up at, Willis Tower up on the 30th floor to meet with the company. And then I would go down to the 18th floor and I would drop a business card and then someone would call and then I'd go up to the 32nd floor and then I'd go down to the 15th floor till eventually, I got kicked out. And so, I mean, that's still how it is these days. I mean, you're, out trying to network, and obviously we've been doing this a long time, and
Right.
so I've built an incredible network. But it's a grind.
Yeah. Well, let me go back too, because we gloss over eight. He had that business that he started at 26, but it was 18
About 18
years.
years, yeah,
And how big did it get? Like, walk me through a little bit of, like, I mean,
yeah,
especially fast forward, you had,
yeah.
4 kids.
So
Right.
yeah, so he had a business partner. So when they started,
Okay.
called at 26 years old, and they were 50-50 owners.
Was it the same other salesman or no? No, that was
No,
the
it
guy
was
who started it.
another. Yeah, it was another salesman. I think was also at Xerox. I might be wrong, but in any event, they started this company. They were a Toshiba reseller,
Okay.
right? So typically in our business, you have an agreement with, call it HP or Canon or Xerox or whoever it might be. So he was a Toshiba reseller back in the day. And so they got to, I think he was one of the largest, like privately held independent Toshiba dealers in the country.
Wow.
And so he sold that, there were probably a little over 100 employees, probably 5 offices,
Wow.
and
All in Chicago, the
all in the
offices?
Chicago and Northwest Indiana
Okay.
region. And, his business partner wanted to retire.
Oh, because he was
And
a
he
little
was a
bit
little
older.
bit older. And so my dad was kind of between a rock and a hard place. You know, does he take the money and go to the bank to buy him out? Does he partner with a Toshiba? And what if something happens to them? Then he's beholden to them. And so in the 11th hour, he sells the business. He stays on, runs it for a couple years.
What? Who was the buyer? Was it
The
like
buyer was actually it was GTCR, so
who's that?
they Bruce Ronner's firm here in Chicago.
Okay,
So they were like a
educate the customer or the
private
audience.
equity venture. They ended up lending quite a bit of money to a company called Global Imaging Services
Okay,
out of Tampa, Florida, and they ended up buying 83 companies nationally,
wow.
and they ran those. They turned it into a huge, huge company. And probably 10 years ago, GTCR sold it to Xerox. I think about $1.7 billion. So I think it was a pretty big, I think it was a pretty good one for
And
them.
so
So
83, like kind of small
yeah,
business.
like my father's business, call it from $5 million to probably $20 million
Got it.
shop. So they bought 83 of them.
Wow. Wow. And I'm also curious, during the time that he was, how long did he stay on for?
He stayed on for, I think it was a 2 or 3 year contract, and then they chose not to renew it, and kind of what found him where he was, sitting at the dinner table that one night. Just
I'd probably ask your dad this question. Maybe you know. It's just like he probably, when you've been an entrepreneur that long, it's kind of hard to have a boss a
oh
little
yeah,
bit, right?
100%. I
It's
mean, he
just like,
went. I mean, I remember him saying, as soon as they took the deal, and him having like instant regret, like all of a sudden now you got a book group, or bunch of directors on the board that you're answering
right.
to, and it's like before it was just him.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that, yeah, a little bit of a struggle there. I think he regretted probably selling that, but who knows? We would have maybe never been in the situation where we're at today.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward then. Like, one, I'm curious, like, what did he really learn from? He scaled a pretty good sized company to 100, 100 employees. Like, what did he learn on his second go with you guys when you
Yeah.
decide that maybe he brought in or does he become a better entrepreneur? Does
Well,
he just kind of
yeah.
do exactly what he does best? And you're like, all right, dad, like you stay over there. Like, what? I'm just
I
curious.
remember the day. I remember sitting at that dinner at our house in Frankfurt, about it on February of 2003. And I remember my dad saying, "Hey, let's start a business." And my older brother was like, "Okay, I got the IT side. What we're gonna scale that." And my dad's like, "Hey, we're just gonna stay nice and small. Like, I don't want it to be big. I want us to live a nice, comfortable, life, family. Bring all the boys into the business, and but we're just gonna take it one step at a time." And we opened the year one. We probably did, I don't know, $400,000 in business,
Hmm.
and then it just kept growing and growing and growing, and it turned into this big snowball effect.
So walk me through when you first started. You're the sale. Like, let's talk about all the brothers, and then also like who plays what part.
Yeah.
But it's like, all right, we're gonna go at this.
Yeah.
Um, who plays what part, and then
Yeah.
and you guys kind of all
So, we had some great people. We were blessed from the very beginning that, my father had sold his business. And so, they had been with him, they had been like family. And so when we started Proven, we bought, my dad brought his sales manager in from his old business. We made him a partner. He brought in his head of HR, who had been with my father for 18 years. He brought
the
in
trust.
his head of service, who had been with my dad, head of sales. I mean, you go through it right one after another, and all those pieces started coming into play. And my older brother, my younger brother, took maybe a couple years so they fully, got into the
Because
business.
your one brother with the IT side, he was at
He
PwC.
was at PwC.
Okay.
He was running a marina that we had up in Michigan that my dad decided we should be in all types of businesses. And so we had a
That was
marina
a
up at our cottage.
little
And
side
so,
project.
yeah. And so my older brother was starting his family, and they lived up in Sister Lakes, Michigan. And so he would find himself coming in periodically. But again, we were a startup. We,
Yeah.
we were 7 employees.
Right.
Didn't even do $1 million in revenue. Couldn't pay for all of us to,
Right.
live in one year, right? And so my older brother quickly got into the operation side of things, understanding, accounting, understanding, the IT, and helping, as we had our first, IT support person. And, my dad and our sales manager, our partner, Jeff Johnson, they did a great job of rah rah, cheering us on. And I mean, I remember sitting in the conference room every single day with four of our sales reps. We're all high school buddies of mine. And we just whiteboarded everything. And so we knew which deal everyone was working on because we didn't have any clients.
Right.
It was like,
Because
oh,
you
I'm
were
calling on.
what was the I mean, what was the thesis then?
Yeah.
We're like, all right, we're just gonna sell some stuff, but like, what was the game plan when you started?
Yeah, we just kind of wung it. It was like my dad's like, "Well, I mean, we used to have University of Chicago. Go in there and go introduce yourself to Joe." And, oh, I used to have, this account and, go introduce yourself, go knock on the door. I mean, it was literally we were just winging it.
Literally.
And I was winging it by myself down here because it was just I was the only person living in the city.
Mm.
And so I would just go up and down the street, up and down, Lincoln Park. I navigated, cold called every single church, every single school, you name it.
Where did you get that sort of like no fear? Like I'll be honest, even with our company, and I think a lot of startups like I don't want to cold call,
Yeah,
like I don't want to like knock on a door, introduce myself. It's old school, but it works because
yeah.
it's relationships. But like, how do you get that? Was that like your dad?
My day, yeah, I mean, I remember throwing a clip on tie when I was 13 and I was on summer break and go cold calling. And I remember Mary Sweet and Jeff Johnson, and they were, sales manager, sales rep. And they said, just go walk in. I got khakis on and a clip on tie. And I walked in at 13 years old. And I remember just introducing myself. And it turned out that the place I walked in was a client of my dad's old company
Oh
at
wow.
the time, and they thought it was kind of funny. But, so in between, I was 23 when we started proving. When I was 16, my dad bought the marina up in Michigan. And, marina, retail, right? People come into you. My dad said, we're not going to be traditional, wait for them to come walk into you. And so my brother Johnny and I would go out with our business cards and we would knock on every single door on every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday up in Michigan on Little Crooked, on Big Crooked, on Magician Lake, on Dewey, on Paw Paw, every single lake.
That's where you
Introducers.
got your.
That's where you get used to it. You get rejection, you get whatever, you get the awkwardness out of the way, and you know,
I wish. I feel like because you and I are in similar age where so when I started my first, well, I told you I was a landscape. I was 12.
yeah,
My dad goes, it's in Chicago. We lived in Arlington Heights. He was like, "All right, you're gonna go outside and you're gonna just knock on every door and see if you can mow their lawn. You know what a mower is? Go make some
yeah,
money." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you want that video game? Okay, well, go
yeah,
go introduce yourself."
yeah. You
And
got to earn
then
it.
yeah, and I ended up getting a ton of my block, and then I also added on, all right, well, it's wintertime. All right, can't mow a lawn. I guess we'll snowplow some driveways. But it was let me see how to talk to a stranger
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, how can I help? You
Yeah,
have a problem? Let me try to sell. I didn't view it as sales at that time, but I was just trying to get a job to make some money. But like you get more and more comfortable with just uncomfortable.
yeah,
Cause I swear, kids they're just on their iPad.
yeah,
No one's going out of their way to just like talk to a stranger or figure out how can I just
yeah,
introduce myself and say, "Hey, can I earn your business?"
yeah,
Now it's like, oh, they don't answer my 10 emails, so I just can't sell them.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a different. It's yeah. Be comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? And like you gotta grind, and you gotta ask for the meeting, you gotta ask for the business, you gotta ask for it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just gonna be handed to you.
Right.
And that certainly, wasn't the case for you, going out and starting, your landscaping business. And um, unfortunately, I just don't know that it might be a hidden or, it might be a lost, uh, with this next generation, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, we have young kids that come in and you see, the discipline that it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
And I don't know that everyone has it, and it's not for everybody, and especially this industry that I'm in.
Right.
So,
Well, so you guys are starting the business, you're knocking on doors, you get one customer after another. And so basically it was kind of like any business that I needs to buy or rent a printer and use those services, that was the business.
that was the business, yeah.
And so from 2003 to when, what did it change at all? And how do you talk about a little bit about the growth and like did you
Yeah.
start adding on services?
So, probably really, so 2003, probably 2015, we really got into the managed IT services. Where,
Okay.
where, where companies were, getting comfortable saying, hey, we should probably outsource this.
Well, so yeah, walk me through why they were like, okay, so who's the customer today?
Yeah.
And or at that time, and then when did they say, I don't really want to do it in-house because maybe they don't have the knowledge, or like
Yeah.
why did they decide, hey, maybe we have a relationship? Are you cross-selling those customers and be like, oh, sounds like you have issue? Like how does it kind of mature to, all right, 2003 to 2015, it's 12 years. We do one thing, we do it really well. You go from 7 employees to how many at 2015 before you
Yeah.
start the IT services?
So 2015, I opened up our Loop office in 2012. So 2015, we were probably 50, 60 employees.
Okay. Okay.
And, the majority of our business was still the print side of the business,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Still recurring, no?
still recurring. Yeah, definitely recurring. We were doing document management, so like workflow automation. So it was kind of like a big buzzword then. We're maybe you're working through multiple systems, whether it be an ERP or an accounting system, and we had this really slick product that kind of was like the overlay that grabbed all this information from all the different systems that you might be working in.
Did you
And
guys make that product?
we did not. No, we found the product through, our dealer network
Okay.
from around the country of other people that were in our industry.
Got it.
So we had like peer-to-peer groups that we joined, and different associations. And so it was just kind of like, hey, best practices. What are you guys doing? Here's our friends from New York that we don't compete against. What are you guys doing? Another family business. Hey, what are you guys using over here? And
Got it.
uh, and it was probably about 2015 that we really made the push into the managed IT services. And and then really the pandemic hit, and that's when it really was just incredible. I
Well,
mean,
so let's go back to, but still on the 2015, what size company roughly was
yeah,
like the typical, and is there an industry that,
yeah.
you focus
So
on?
I would say between, you know, it could be a startup where they don't have the money or they don't want to spend the money on a, IT person, or it could be, 25 to a couple hundred employees, I would say,
Okay.
where they're just, hey, you have this person at help desk and you're paying them 50, 60, 70 grand a year, and they get the knowledge and the wherewithal of everything, and they either get enough, you know, certifications where they could go to an MSP like us, or they could go to a law firm and get paid 3 times as much. And so that was like the most common thing was the over the I guess you'd say the turnover in like help desk and low paying IT positions.
Okay.
And so that's really where it first said, well, hold on a second, this is, everyone needs some, type of help desk. And so that's where it kind of started. And what it's morphed into now, I mean, say, the pandemic hits and people realize that, like, I'm paying a CIO, you call it whatever, 100,000, 200,000, $400,000. Maybe, we're better off outsourcing that position to someone like us where we are a virtual CIO.
Right.
We're a virtual chief information security officer. Make sure you're compliant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're a fraction of the cost. We're 24/7, 365. You don't need to pay me benefits. You don't need to worry if I get hit by a bus. We got a team of 200 IT men and women, that support all of our clients across the country.
So you kind of wedge in at it. This area around the help desk was kind of like a
Yeah, that was like
typical
yeah,
typical area,
yeah,
and then from there you go you kind of land and expand into, all right, like, what does a CIO typically do at this 200 person company? And maybe they are getting paid 200 grand, but like,
yeah,
what's the typical? And then obviously you sold it on why it can economically make sense. But what
yeah,
is their typical like job? And then where do you
yeah.
come in
I
on an
mean,
angle?
I think it depends, like, which industry you're talking about, but, they want to make sure that they're secure. They want to help plan for the future, kind of where you're at, where you're going, and how do you get there. And so it probably comes in all different levels. I mean, if I could tell you the amount of different CIO, CISOs, IT from, you know, level one to, it's funny actually, I think about it because I think the Geek Squad, we single handedly shut down the Geek Squad at Best Buy when we hired their first 6 teams from Orland Park, from Tinley Park. And
Really?
so I think about all the different walks of life that, came from there. But, yeah, I mean, a CIO, I think that they're, they're an intricate part of growing, making sure that you're up to date with your technology and that you have the right pieces in place for moving forward and staying secure.
And the CISO stands for that's a chief, like a security officer?
Yeah,
Or
security officer.
okay,
Yeah.
got it, got it. And at what point, I mean, are these companies, are they typically on premise still, or like in terms of your
Are you talking
customers?
about our
Yeah,
our
yeah,
offerings?
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, and I might be off here, but I would say 90+% of what we can do is done remotely.
Got it.
So our NOC, our SOC, our Network Operations Center, our Security Operations Center is in Tinley Park
Okay.
at our new corporate headquarters. And most of the men and women work out of there, though we do have 16 offices around the country. And so some of them sit in different offices. Some of them sit on site in, clients' offices. It just depends. But I'd say 90% of what we do is done remotely. When needed, yeah, we'll have, on-prem meetings with our clients for sure.
So, and twofold. One, it's probably a better margin that way.
Yeah.
But are there technical infrastructure, these businesses that you serve, are they still on old school non-cloud, you know?
Not many. Some of them. I mean, we see it all the time where you have, you know, especially like in manufacturing,
Yeah,
old school manufacturing. We were talking
right.
about, my dad's age, late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, a lot of them, they don't know. And it's if the younger, son or daughter isn't going to be taking that over, if they don't have the right people in place, they are. But the majority of our support is all, in the cloud.
And
And we're
have
either taking them there or we're helping them get there.
got it. And is your customers ever people who, all right, and this is just a general question. If that specific manufacturing company goes and sells to private equity, is your customer ever that private equity company where they're outsourcing their IT to
Yeah,
someone
yeah, all the
who
time.
all the time?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes they actually go out and they buy an IT company, and that's one of
Oh,
their,
okay.
portfolio companies. I mean, I have one that owns an IT company that's not their main, and they still brought us on just to kind of
Consult.
keep them in check and consult. And, but yeah, I mean, yeah, you would love to get into a private equity firm because they
You get all
typically
their
own,
port.
yeah, you get all their portfolio companies.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. 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 So when from around 2020, you said things kind of went gangbusters. To
yeah.
yeah, what happened then?
Yeah, I mean, so, the world shut down.
Yeah.
Nobody went into the office, which means that our print business was absolutely awful. You know, so typically our clients will lease equipment from us, right? So they're on a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year cycle.
Okay.
So in 2020, no one's in the office, so they're not going to need the number of devices they had before. If they had a lease coming up, they were really rethinking things. Maybe we'll put everything on hold for a year or two. And it was a lot of like guessing, what are we going to do? I mean, our revenues went from, I think they were down 32% that year. And we're talking about like almost 100, I mean, a lot of money.
Right.
And, and, and so then we were trying to find ways to have conversations with people.
Yeah. What do you say? Well,
Yeah.
we've lost about, yeah, $30 million in sales, which it's not our fault,
Yeah.
but that's what the market happened.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
you going back to the whiteboard in the boardroom and like, all right, guys, well, what can we do?
yeah.
We're having this managed IT grow. What was the kind of conversations of just like,
Dude, we were trying everything. We were talking to our counterparts. We're selling kiosks that temperature, for checking in and if you had COVID and
oh,
this
you
and
guys
that.
were just, what can we sell?
What else can we sell?
Well, so
Yeah.
where do you go to get the products for that though? Or like what?
Everybody was getting creative.
Yeah.
We talked to some counterparts across the country. But, people still did, I think everybody, even us including, kind of reflecting on how many people work for us, how many people are doing what. Are
Hmm.
we a little bit fat? Where could we trim the fat? And I think, we did. We trimmed the fat where we could.
Yeah.
Probably to the tune of, 30 employees.
Wow. Because you were at how many then?
Just say we were 280 then or 300.
Got it.
And as we were doing that, other companies were doing that.
Hmm.
And so what does that mean? Can they get rid of a CIO and outsource a CIO?
Right.
Right? I mean, there's 250 grand.
Right.
Do we need 10 people on the IT team or could we get it done with 6 of them?
Well, so how? Okay, so if I'm them and I'm just thinking about the sale, okay, they look at the cost, but then I'm sure there's an objection of, well, we've always had them in the office. Now we can't really be in the office. Like, how can I ensure that you can execute to the level at where we're at or above virtually? Like,
Yeah,
what's the you know, because sure,
yeah,
you're scared to like, well, we've never really done that.
yeah.
So
Well,
what do you know?
yeah, it's crazy because people had to work remotely,
Yeah,
and so were they as efficient? Were the IT guys on the team as efficient? If they were, and the answer was yes, if can you start finger pointing and saying, "Hold on a second, Tory did this, this, and this.
right.
Bob wasn't doing that. I was doing his." And so I I think that was across the board. I mean, our our headquarters, Tinley Park, this beautiful office. I got to have you down there. Comcast built out this beautiful call center.
Okay.
They had over 400 of them in the country. This office is 90,000 square feet
For just a call center.
for a call center.
Oof.
575 workstations. $28 million into this building. Pandemic hits. They realize that everybody can work remotely. We buy the building
Oh, wow.
3 years later. They never moved in there for pennies on the dollar. And so just that's a prime example. Now they
Right,
have 400 of these across the country. They realize they don't need any of them. So how many other businesses out there,
right,
either I mean, you could look in the office, in the city of Chicago right now, how many of these buildings are, fully occupied, how many people are a couple days a week working remote,
right.
and then how many of those employees might you not need,
Right, right. Well, I
right?
think I saw the other day there was some like, I don't know, mid skyscraper, maybe it was a mid rise, but like some guy bought it for like pennies on the dollar. It was like 8 million bucks or
Oh
something
yeah.
for like, I don't know. I just saw it like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's the Ani guys, the Ani
Yes.
brothers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it was a building that traded for like 85 million. They
Right,
got it for like nothing, and
right.
they're gonna convert that into residential, or maybe they just take it from a C minus building to an A. I don't know.
So that's what. So you got a steal, and
Oh,
then
it's unbelievable.
that's where you hold all the equipment and stuff.
So we have like three offices down there. Our old corporate headquarters is where we typically hold the equipment.
Okay.
So we got, yeah, between there and our Maryville, Indiana office.
And then you own those offices, or do you guys rent?
We own quite a bit of them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we rent downtown. We rent in Schaumburg. We own all three buildings in Tinley,
Nice.
Maryville, Indiana. So
Interesting. And so when I mean that makes a lot of sense. So you get into this virtual, did you really have that service before the kind of COVID kind of hit and where you offered more of this virtual CISO and CIO or what so
yeah,
what is the offering today
yeah.
on the
I
virtual?
mean, yeah, you name it. I mean, it's probably easier for me to say what we don't do, but it's
Okay.
everything from soup to nuts in IT support.
Okay.
And if we don't physically do it, we have a lot of our partnerships. Be it CrowdStrike, disaster, whatever it might be. We'll get the
What's
partnerships
disaster?
like disaster recovery.
Oh,
So
okay.
making sure you have systems in place. So it's not like we physically have the software and the systems in place for that. We have typically partnerships where, you know, you'd be able to offer those services.
So when you're going through this growth of like again, I mean your dad had a company in 18 years, went to just over 100. Is there much difference when you're at 250 or 300 and like just talk about that growth of like
Yeah,
cuz I do want to touch in one cuz I know that you've started to buy some of these other shops
sure.
and but just in terms of growth like what I guess my specific question is one is a 100-person company a lot different than a 250-person company to you?
Yeah,
And then the second, which we'll get into, is just like now that you start to acquire, whether it's a mom and pop shop and it's not local, we'll go through that in a second. But yeah,
yeah. So here's what I'd say. I mean, the biggest thing that we've tried to do is keep, our culture. And I think we do an incredible job of doing that, whether that's having, you know, biweekly breakfasts or biweekly lunches that we're cooking, employee, recognition lunches and dinners. I think we have an incredible culture. And I think that's the biggest thing that you lose once you get to a certain size
right.
is you start to kind of lose your identity.
Yeah. You go
And
from small business
yeah,
to
I
kind
mean,
of,
when I
right,
think of 2015 when we were 40 employees, and then you think right now we're, I don't know, 400.
right.
There's a lot more HR and red tape um but I think the key is keeping the culture.
So how do you keep the culture when you start buying other companies? And
Yeah,
what was the impetus for that? Why did
yeah.
you start doing that?
So we bought our first business right around the pandemic, and that was an IT company out of Maryville, Indiana.
And it came to you, or why
It
did you?
came to us, yeah, it came to us through a third party, and uh, the son had wanted to move out to Utah full time, and he had this business, and it was right place, right time. Everybody wanted to stay on board. We wanted to make sure. I mean, that's the thing is like you can't be that. I don't know. I guess to have that kind of ego to think that just because we buy this company that they're going to want to stay there.
Yeah.
No, you want to make sure that what you're buying that you're going to be able to get that into your, you know,
Well, that's the hard part.
into your culture. And so it was a small enough business, it was maybe a couple $1,000,000, 30 employees. And
Did you guys date a little bit before? Like, how does that? Because it's your first time.
yeah, well, it was funny because, yeah, the owner got up and moved during the pandemic right out to Utah.
Oh, and so he was kind
Like,
of
so he
remote.
was already like done.
Okay.
And he didn't need any money. I think he was well off on his own.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, we had gotten to know some of the employees there, and I think it was a fairly quick, hey, we're 16 miles from our Tinley Park headquarters to Maryville, Indiana.
right.
We drive through there all the time, going up to our cottage up in Michigan, and so it was one that was kind of an easy one to fold in.
Okay.
So this next one we did out in Colorado got brought to us from a manufacturer, from one of the manufacturers that we represent,
Oh, okay.
and the owner wanted to make sure that the company that he bought, he'd had the company I think for 18 years, maybe 20 years, so he wanted to make sure that the right people came along and that they were going to stay and keep his team, and he had some health issues, so he wanted to, we wanted him to stay on. And so I think we agreed to like a 3-year.
Is that your ideal scenario where you
Yeah.
have the operator?
Yeah, I mean, I think so because and especially like in this situation where, we don't live in Colorado and, we wanted to make sure that, his team stayed on, that he stayed on, that we helped transition
Right.
um, his employees and then I think the clients as well.
Well, and it's not 16 miles away where you can kind of
Right. Yeah, a little bit
go.
different story, or yeah. But
Right. So,
the interesting about that one was that they were just a Xerox dealer, so they didn't do any IT service offerings at all. And so that's where we kind of looked at it and said, hey, they have this customer base. They got I'm gonna make it up 500 clients. We could go in and cross sell.
right.
We can teach their salesman and their sales manager, hey, this is another offering that we're going to go to our clients with.
Right.
And so that was about a year ago that we closed on the business last February.
Okay.
And so we're just starting now to really kind of roll out our service offering from the managed IT, standpoint.
How many employees did they?
Call it 50.
It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So how do you? God, a couple questions. In terms of the same software stack, the same,
Yeah.
culture's one, but like also like just integrating all the systems so that
Yeah.
you guys have the visibility to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing that we're able to do is kind of just replicate what we're doing, what we've been doing here the last 23 years. And
A
then,
little helpful.
right, a little bit of help there. Um, I'm pretty certain. I think just about maybe we lost one employee out there.
Wow.
Maybe one in the last year. So I think we're doing, a good enough job.
Yeah. Well, I guess I didn't really think about it is because your your main day to day, you're not the. It's easier for you to roll up or buy other companies because part of the integration is something you're already good at anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
Did that open up more West Coast customers?
So they have 4 offices throughout Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
We had an office in Arizona, which we had landed some clients there. It was kind of we did it right at the beginning of the right before the pandemic, and so it was really short lived. But yeah, it's going to be able to help us certainly, support clients out in out west. Um, yeah, we'll see how far that reach is going to be because I mean it really is either, and it's obviously easier to buy a company than it is to organically open up an office
Sure.
and find new clients and have to cold call and knock on doors and do
Right,
everything
right,
that we
right.
did to start that. But it's nice just having a presence, I think, in
Right.
Colorado.
I mean, I don't think everyone would say it's easier to, well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's difference of opinion. Sometimes it's easier to go inorganic or organically, like open up the office. I guess my question would be, um, why do you think people choose proven IT instead of maybe a much bigger,
Yeah.
business? Like, because I have my thoughts, but like, why do you think that that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, it is a great question. I think we've built a pretty reputable name for us over the years in Chicago. I think we're kind of turned into a household name, if you will. And here's what I tell you: just like our employees, we have little turnover. Our customers, I mean, other than two small acquisitions, the one that we did a year ago, a little bit bigger one. I mean, it's been all organic growth. For us to take our company from 400,000 our first year to over 100 million in revenue, you can't do it if you're not taking care of your current customer, right? You can only do so much, and you're going to have some turnover. If you're not taking care of your clients, you have to buy it. You have to grow your business by buying companies,
Yeah.
and so I think that we have an incredible reputation. They always called my dad Honest John. Doug Buffon, God rest his soul, former Chicago Bear, gave my dad the nickname Honest John 30 years ago,
Wow.
and you know, I think that's how we've decided, that's how we've grown our business. And I think that, it's taking care of that customer. They're number one. If it's not for them, we're
Right.
not here. We're not having this conversation.
Some of the simple things about business, just do what you say,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and you can build a long-term business. Um, where are we going next with the business? I mean, you guys have had incredible growth,
Yeah.
now over 20 years. Now you're starting to buy companies. Like, what does the future look like for
Yeah.
the company?
I think if we stay on this path, if we stay driven and focused, trust my older brother at the head of the company and, his executive team. And I think if we just keep the grind going, I think we'll be able to expand into other markets. And, our goal is to, you know, continue to take care of our current customers, give back to the communities that we all live in. And I just think that we could do this really throughout the whole country.
I noticed that you do talk a little bit about giving back because I saw a little bit
Yeah.
about that on your site and
Well, that was the thing that my dad did say too. I remember from the very beginning, we're going to stay small, come from humble beginnings, and we're going to give back to the communities. And so, whether it's, any of these wonderful nonprofits, that we work with, that we're, targeting, or if it's just, for a great cause. It's funny, I did one of my clients years ago, they asked me to be on their fundraising committee,
hmm,
and they were celebrating 50 years. Aunt Martha's Health and Wellness, shout out to Raul Garza, and he had said, hey, we're celebrating 50 years. And I'm a little goofy. I do these like long distance races and triathlons and ultra marathons. And he's like, I'd like you consider, can you raise, 5 grand for me? I might have had a drink or two at the time. And I said, it's your 50th anniversary. I'm going to raise 50 grand. I'm going to run 50 miles for your 50th anniversary. And I did it. I went out, took me 10 hours and 57 minutes. I raised $50,000 through, my clients, through my network, through, friends. And so I think it's important to give back to the community when you can. And so
yeah.
we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, I did want to touch on that. I was saving that for you said goofy. I think it's a little people that do Ironmans and ultra marathons. You're a bit of a psycho.
Yeah.
So talk. Well, how did you get into this?
Yeah. I never was a big runner. I'm
Right.
5 foot nothing, short, pudgy kid. And, I was inspired. I think it's Dick Voigt that had the son that he was a former Navy SEAL.
Okay.
And there was a great video I was watching. It was right when we started the company. And I was probably 25, so maybe 2 years after we started the business. And he was a former Navy SEAL, and he had a son that was uh, paraplegic, quadriplegic, and severely handicapped. And he went and did an Ironman. And I was watching these
Are
videos,
you
and
out of your mind?
it's unbelievable. I mean,
Oh
he's
god,
swimming
I'd
in a
be in
raft.
tears.
He's swimming in a raft with his son there. He's on a bicycle with his son in the basket, and then he's running a marathon in Hawaii with his, adult son. And I was just like, I don't know, I was so moved by
Yeah,
it.
of course.
And then I was like, I'm gonna start getting it. So I started small, started with a super sprint.
Uh-huh.
And it
What's
took
that?
me, I don't know, 17 minutes to do. It was like you swim from here to across the
Okay.
street, and then you, you
Yeah.
know, 2-minute bike and whatever, 20-minute run. And so I started small and I worked my way up. And then within 2 years, I started getting into Ironman. And then,
Dude, I how many
s-
hours is that?
yeah, my first one I think was the quickest one. 13 hours.
Oh god.
Yeah.
There's a couple things here too, is like anyone that and I don't know many, who've done, and my cousin used to, Ironman, and I've only met one person who's done the ultra marathon, which some say that that's harder than the Ironman, but
Yeah.
your mental uh like fortitude is just it's different. Then it
Yeah.
seems like just because
Yeah.
you're in that much physical pain that you've somehow figured out how to rewire your brain to like just get through it.
Yeah.
How do you even train for that? I mean, you seem
Yeah,
like you're
it's a
training
lot.
24/7.
Have you heard of David Goggins?
Of course.
Right? Have you read his book? Have you listened to his
I
book?
haven't read his book, but
It's unbelievable, right?
okay.
And so with that, when I decided I was going to do an ultra was when I was listening to his book, uh, "Can't Hurt Me," or as my buddy Tommy Beale would say, "Don't hurt me." But but yeah, I mean, it's like anything in life. It could get so overwhelming if you just look at the finish line and think like, man, everything that I need to do.
Right.
I got to do a 2.5 mile bike or swim. I got to do a 112-mile bike, and then I got to go run a marathon. And like, if you think about it that way, it's super overwhelming. But if you just sit there and say, I'm just gonna get halfway through the swim, see how I feel. I'm gonna get done with the swim, and I'm gonna thank the volunteers that are right here, and I'm gonna have a banana, and I'm gonna get on the bike, and I'm gonna go for a bike ride.
Right.
Like if you break it down, and same thing with the business, if you just
Yeah.
think about it, could get so overwhelming. And so I think if you put one foot in front of the other and just take it one step at a time, one discipline at a time, one right client at a time, one cold call at a time, one meeting at a time.
Right.
And that's how I think I've learned how to finish. By the way, I've finished every single race I've ever
Oh
started. So
man. With no because injuries can play a role in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
where's the coolest place you've now where have you done the ultra marathons, and then where's the coolest place you've done the Ironman?
So I've done Madison, Wisconsin, the full Ironman 3 times.
Okay. Oh, by the
Um,
lakes, it's probably cool.
yeah, I'll tell you one of the wildest races I did was the Escape from Alcatraz.
What?
And
Okay, tell me
so,
about that.
yeah, so it's not like a traditional like distance of, an Olympic or a half Ironman. You go on a perfectly fine boat out to Alcatraz. They sing the national anthem, and 2,500 triathletes jump in the water and they swim to shore. And so
Okay.
it's a mile and a half swim in shark infested waters, right? And then it's an 18-mile bike, which I swear it was all uphill. And like you can't train for it here because there's no hills
Right.
in Chicago. Right. I mean, like in the city, you know what I mean? Like you got to go to wherever to start finding hills. And then, yeah, it was an 8-mile run, which again, I think it was all uphill, but that was the wildest one.
Really?
Um, and then I did the Ice Age 50 miler. That was one of the coolest ones I ever ran because
Ice Age
you have
50.
12 hours to complete it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you don't get this really cool belt buckle.
All right. Where did
And
where is this?
that's in like Lake Geneva, and
Okay.
it's all hills. I mean, the whole thing is
Is it what it sounds like? It's in the
it is.
frigid cold.
It was cold that day, but it's in like they call it the Ice Age 50 miler because I think that's the only place in the area that has like hills. It has over like a mile of elevation, and you're on a dirt trail, and I was on pace to not finish in 12 hours. And I was like, I'm not taking a whole Saturday that I did this and I'm not going to finish it. And I finished with 17 minutes to go.
Oh
And
my
that was pretty wild.
gosh.
That was like the close where I wasn't,
Well, you
talk
were
about,
thinking like, yeah,
yeah,
I'm not going to do it.
being
Just
comfortable, being uncomfortable.
yeah,
That
just
was it. And I
yep.
was like, and so I finished it. And that was one of the proudest, first Ironman was the coolest because after 8 hours and 18 minutes, I had never done a marathon before. And my dad shows up. I was all teary eyed because he wasn't going to show up. and I see him, and I'm like, all right, 8 hours and 18 minutes into a workout. I'm like, I'm gonna go run my first marathon, and it was fantastic.
Right.
And so probably, yeah, I'm proud of them all, but that was pretty cool.
Oh, well, listen, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah,
Dude, it's been awesome. Thank
yeah.
you
Thank
very
you,
much
Steve.
for coming in and learning more
Yeah,
about
hopefully I
you.
did
And
it right. I was, a little
I
bit
think you
nervous,
did
so
I think we got
all
some
right,
great stuff. Great
awesome,
stuff.
man. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, brother.